FISA and other surveillance programs are intentionally designed to preserve the privacy of U.S. citizens, to ensure the information is collected and used only for legitimate national security and criminal investigative purposes. There are statutory safeguards, warrants based on probable cause, a FISA court that is involved, audits on the back end, and it is a felony punishable by up to 10 years in federal prison to unlawfully disseminate it. In January of this year, the Washington Post reported, according to a senior U.S. government official, a named U.S. citizen, and I will not use the name, phoned the Russian ambassador several times on December the 29th. In February of this year, the Washington Post reported 9 current and former officials who were in senior positions at multiple agencies at the time of the call spoke on the condition of anonymity to discuss intelligence matters, and that officials began poring over intelligence reports, intercepted communications, and diplomatic cables. In February of this year, the New York Times reported a U.S. citizen discusses sanctions with the Russian ambassador in a phone call, according to officials who have seen a transcript of the wiretapped conversation. And again in February of this year, the New York Times reported on a phone call involving a U.S. citizen, including significant discussions of phone records, intercepted calls, intercepted communications, and reported the NSA captured calls and then asked the FBI to collect as much information as possible. I thought it was against the law to disseminate classified information. Is it?
Oh, yes. It's a serious crime.
How would reporters know a U.S. citizen made a telephone call to an agent of a foreign power?
How would they know? Legally?
Yes.
If it was declassified and then discussed in a judicial proceeding or a congressional hearing, something like that.
And assume none of those facts are at play. How would they know?
Someone told them who shouldn't have told them.
How would a reporter know about the existence of intercepted phone calls?
Well, same thing.
How would reporters know if a transcript existed of an intercepted communication?
Somebody told them who shouldn't have told them.
What does the term mask mean in the concept of FISA and other surveillance programs?
It's our practice of removing the names of U.S. persons to protect their privacy and their identity unless it hits certain exceptions. So masking means I'll often see an intelligence report from NSA that will say U.S. person number 1, U.S. person number 2, U.S. person number 3, and there's no further identification on the document.
Admiral Rogers said there are 20 people within the NSA that are part of the unmasking process. How many people within the FBI are part of the unmasking process?
Surely more. Given the nature of the FBI's work, we come into contact with U.S. persons a whole lot more than the NSA does because we only conduct our operations in the United States.
NSA, FBI, what other U.S. government agencies have the authority to unmask a U.S. citizen's name?
All agencies that collect information pursuant to FISA have what are called standard minimization procedures, which are approved by the FISA court that govern how they will treat U.S. person information. So I know the NSA does, I know the CIA does, obviously the FBI does.
How about Maine Justice?
Maine Justice does have standard minimization.
Does the White House have the authority to unmask a U.S. citizen's name?
I think other elements of the government that are consumers of our products can ask the collectors to unmask. The unmasking resides with those who collected the information. So if Mike Rogers' folks collected something and they send it to me in a report and it says U.S. person number 1 and it's important for the FBI to know who that is, our request will go back to them. The White House can make similar requests of the FBI or of NSA, but they don't on their own collect, so they can't on their own unmask.
Do you know whether Director Clapper have access to an unmasked name?
Sure, he was the Director of National Intelligence.
Would Director Brennan have access to an unmasked U.S. citizen's name?
Yes.
Would National Security Advisor Susan Rice have access to an unmasked U.S. citizen's name?
Yes.
Would former White House advisor Ben Rhodes have access to an unmasked U.S. citizen's name?
I don't know the answer to that.
Would former Attorney General Loretta Lynch have access to an unmasked U.S. citizen's name?
Yes, as would any Attorney General.
We're going to discuss a lot of important things today. Whether Russia attempted to influence our democratic process, whether they sought to influence it, the motive behind that interference and influence, our U.S. response. Some of that may rise to the level of a crime. Some of it does not rise to the level of a crime. One thing you and I agree on is the felonious dissemination of classified material most definitely is a crime.